Okay, we're back for part two. So, before I tell the story, we've all got to start at the very, very beginning. And I suppose it's always good to set the scene and talk about me, myself, and I, should we say, in terms of where I've come from and the reasons why the journey is so important, and you kind of having a better understanding of how we've got where we are today. So, I'm me, Rusty. Rusty isn't the real name. But I think I've always been known Rusty for probably about maybe since I was 6 or 7 years old. I was born in Poole on the south coast, but I grew up abroad. So, as a result of a messy divorce by my mother and father, I moved to the south coast of France. And at the age of 11, I was thrown into a school and didn't speak French. And I spent the next 10 years doing my education and art studies before making the decision to then come back. So I did art studies on the south coast, and everything was going really well. And I was even at a point, I was clay modelling, designing concept cars for the future. And it all went suddenly wrong when I was approached by a recruiter from BMW in Munich, and they wanted a concept designer to work in one of their factories. They would provide the luxurious apartment for the duration of the training, which was going to be 4 years. And suddenly, when they realised when I was filling out paperwork that I spoke English and French, but I didn't actually speak German, it all fell apart. So with that in mind, I came back to France, went back to Paris, asked the question, how many more years would I have to do before having the opportunity to then do the same role in Munich that I would in Paris. And I was told that it would be another 4 to 6 years at the age of 17 with no guarantees of a job at the end of it. So with that in mind, it was time to move on. So I went back to the family, spoke to the family at length, and if I was going to make the decision to stay in France at the time, I probably would have become a bartender, manager, worked in hospitality, and there's nothing wrong with that. Gorgeous weather, seasonal activity, but it wasn't really a career. And my grandfather at the time said to me, Rusty, I think you could join the military. So I was shipped off to Portsmouth for a couple of days, and had one of those kind of career manager roles where you knock on the door, and they've since changed how they do business now, but you knock on the door and you've got kind of three buzzers, so one for the Air Force, one for the Navy, and one for the Army. And I centred my efforts on wanting to join either the Royal Marines or the Royal Air Force, and I just didn't want to join the Army, conscious that some other of my family members had gone in, but it just wasn't for me longer term. So with that in mind, I knocked on the door and I pressed the Air Force button, but lo and behold, I had a Army RSM that picked up the call, and he was in his plush number twos, his ceremonial dress, and he says, you, sir, look like your prime opportunity to join the infantry battalion. So I gave my apologies and said, unfortunately, sir, he was a corporal at the time, I'm here to join the Air Force or the Marines. And I suppose fortunately for me, as my career has turned out, I ended up speaking to a corporal in the Air Force because some other Paul Grunt was getting beasted in the back room because he wanted to join the Marines. So if you ever join the Marines, make sure that your chin-up bar is tried and tested, because I think the majority of the instructors have a tendency to ask you to do 10 chin-ups before even talking to you. If you can't, you're straight out the door. Anyway, I went through my training. My qualifications didn't actually change over from French to English. So I was originally going to go in as a linguist because I already had the French. They said, yeah, you can work on board aircraft. And that suddenly dissipated very, very quickly when they realised that they couldn't cross over my French qualifications, or they couldn't equate it. So I was offered a variety of trades, including painter and sprayer for aircraft. The Air Force no longer do that. That's outsourced, as well as a driver. And I kind of thought that I always wanted to take something out of if I was to lose everything tomorrow, I needed to take something out of the military that I could earn quickly. And for me, that was driving. So I joined, I went through basic, had a flavour for discipline, probably a tearaway child if I'm honest. And I became what they call an MTD, so a mechanical transport driver. And I was put through a variety of courses for minibus to truck to Range Rover to off-road to articulated lorries to coaches to vans to tanks to forklift trucks, everything else. And it was brilliant trade. Got posted to pretty much all over the place, from Norfolk to Scotland to the Midlands to overseas. But I got bored really quickly. So I ended up doing day runs to like Brize Norton, which is a central transport hub, which bored me to tears. And the only thing that I could consider was going up in the ranks, and you'd have to serve a certain amount of time before you get promoted. Okay, so I used to do qualifications of an evening. I can always remember having sticky notes in my single black accommodation and trying my best where possible to do additional bits of education to keep me going, to self-promote, to make me aware that there is a possibility of promotion down the line. But I quickly realised that life as an MTD just wasn't for me. I kind of yearned for more. So I invested a bit of time and energy in doing lots of stuff, secondary duties with the infantry, doing some special duties with the linguist side. Before then, in 2009, graduating and taking a commission as an operations officer. And that's kind of probably where I come into my own. And I've probably thanked my lucky stars that that's me in a nutshell now. And it kind of replicates what I've become over the past probably 10, 20 years now. So I did 15 years total in the military with a variety of trades, but I finished my career path in 2018, having served probably another 9 years or so as a commissioned officer, as an operations officer or an air operations officer. I think it's probably called something different now. A brilliant trade, the opportunity to travel far and wide, work on all different types of platforms, given the ability to work independently in small teams, in group teams. What you often find with the British Forces, for those that don't know or are new to the channel, is the Army and the Navy and the Marines will all go away in clusters, groups, battalions, regiments, shipmates, etc. Whereas the Air Force, subject to your specialisation and certainly being a commissioned officer, you get sent away as a singleton. So the majority of my time was being sent away to be an attaché to an embassy or to a squadron or to a regiment or a battalion, and I'd serve probably 18 months to 24 months in one location before then being moved elsewhere. I did a variety of tours in my career, so several tours around the UK, 6 or 7. Did a lot of overseas tours, and we usually do anywhere between 4 and 6 months. So hot, sandy, dusty conditions: Oman, Yemen, Libya, Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan, Northern Ireland, Scotland, Canada, South America, California, DC, Belize, the list goes on. So phenomenal experiences that has probably made me who I am today. But in 2017, everything kind of changed for me. The rate of deployments, the minimal time at home with family and friends, the redeployment with training that was needed, kind of became unsustainable. And I spoke to my career manager and I said, like, I need to find something else that would temper my willingness to kind of move and have a better life. And lo and behold, a role came up in Africa, and it was a 6-month tour, probably 7 months by the time I finished, working with the US, working with the host nation, but pepper potting around the Chad, Nigeria area. A phenomenal job, but led to, unfortunately, a lot of close friends and work colleagues that I gained out there, losing their lives, losing limbs, being shot at, and it's a very, very desolate place, very lawless society. To understand a 7-year-old with like an AK-47 or a grenade in his hand, or minus a leg, minus a limb, was quite harrowing, if I'm honest. Dorm raids, earlier doors in the morning, kinetic activity, lots of travelling, hopping on and off of aircraft. Probably took its toll. And as a result of an incident at the back end of my tour, I made the bold decision to leave the forces. And I suppose with any transition, you already have the mindset before you leap. So the willingness to do something bigger and better than what you do is in you before the action comes. So you get the itch that you can't scratch, and I'm sure everybody's had that. And I had that probably a couple of years before I left. But going to Africa was the deciding factor. The problem came with, you're in the military. Well, what do you do? What is the best alternative now? You've served for 15 years. You've done your job. What are you going to do to earn money? Does it have to be something that's hobby related? Does it something have to be linked to the defence community, or could you have a bit of both? And I suppose that's where the passion for bikes came very, very quickly. Probably consider myself very humble in terms of what I've got, what I aspire to have. I'm not very materialistic, but I wanted to do something. The good old adage says that if you find something you love doing, you'll never work a day in your life. Now, we've all got the stresses and constraints of finances, and trying to find a job that entails a hobby is quite hard to do. And I centered around bikes, and I have done so for the best part of 10 years or so. I ended up doing a large proportion of my downtime, so when I wasn't working with the forces, mountain biking, and several injuries and tournaments and travels to like north of Scotland and downhill mountain biking later, I kind of found a flair for it. But that is for another video. So yeah, hope you like the intro. Like and subscribe, and then let's talk about Rusty's Bike Shop, or the passion for the channel that just doesn't show any signs of stopping. See you soon.